I'm Alyssa. I'm 29 years old. And yes, technically I was homeless while living under my parents' roof. Let that sink in. My suitcase was in the hallway, my clothes crammed into boxes, and my childhood bedroom. Now officially my younger sister's study zone. You can just sleep on the couch until you get it together, my mom said casually, like she was offering me a cup of tea and not a complete erasure of my existence. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I nodded, smiled faintly. And in that moment, I began planning something they would never see coming. If you've ever been treated like a footnote in your own family story, drop a comment. I want to know where you're tuning in from. Like and subscribe if you've ever had to quietly prove your worth just to be taken seriously. Trust me, this story goes places. 6 months earlier, I graduated from UC Berkeley, top of my class in sustainable architecture. I had job offers, interviews lined up, and a whole blueprint of what my life was supposed to be. Then the recession hit, fast and brutal. Architecture firms froze hiring, projects vanished overnight. Every offer I had disappeared like smoke. So I did what many of us did, I moved back home. My parents, Janice and Malcolm, live in a modest 3-bedroom in Syracuse. It wasn't perfect, but it was familiar. My childhood room still had my old awards competition blueprints and even that little cork board with my dream job clippings pinned on it. And then there was my sister Brielle. 18, dramatic, and endlessly charming. If I was the quiet planner, she was the whirlwind. We were close growing up, even with our differences. She'd flop across my bed with college gossip, TikTok drama, or anxiety about her SATs. "Do you think I could actually get into State U?" she asked one night, eyes wide, chewing on a pen cap. "With your grades and those 3 volunteer projects." "Absolutely," I told her. For a while, things were stable. I helped around the house, contributed what I could, $300 a month from my shrinking savings. I cooked, I cleaned, I applied for jobs daily, and even landed a few promising interviews. I was doing everything right. At least I thought I was. It started with little things. At dinner, my mom proudly announced Brielle had been selected for an elite high school research program. "That'll look amazing on her application," she said, ladling soup into Brielle's bowl. "Liz was in an honors program too," my dad mumbled, barely glancing up. Mom gave a distracted nod. "Yeah, but things are more competitive now. Brielle's under so much more pressure." I looked at Brielle expecting maybe a sheepish smile or some acknowledgement, but she just shrugged. I said nothing. Why pick a fight over a passive-aggressive compliment? 2 days later, I had an interview with a local firm, Corvus Architecture. Mid-size, environmentally focused, exactly my niche. It went well, shockingly well. The head of the firm, Linda, even said, "You've got a clean eye for balance. That's rare. We'll be in touch." For the first time in months, I felt hopeful. I bought ingredients for my mom's favorite chicken Alfredo and spent the afternoon cooking. We even had wine with dinner. For 3 hours, I felt like a daughter again, not a burden. Soon-to-be Corvus architect Alyssa, my dad toasted. I should have savored that night more. I got home 2 days later from a coffee chat with a local contractor he offered to let me shadow him on projects. But something was off. Quiet. Too quiet. As I climbed the stairs, I stopped dead. My stuff. In boxes. Dumped in the hallway. Shoes, books, even my framed degrees stacked like they belonged to a garage sale. Heart pounding, I opened what used to be my bedroom. It was unrecognizable. My drafting table gone, replaced by Brielle's vanity. My bed swapped out for her bigger one. Concert posters where my architecture models used to be, like I had never lived there at all. "Oh, hey," Mom said from behind me, carrying a laundry basket like it was any normal day. "We moved your things." Brielle needed more space. "You moved me out," I asked quietly, without even telling me. "You weren't using the room that much," she replied, like that justified everything. Brielle appeared at the door, flipping her hair like she was on a reality show. "I have like 10 college prep folders. Plus, you're always job hunting. You'll probably move out soon anyway, right?" I couldn't respond. Not without crying. Not without screaming. Dad joined in from their room like he'd been waiting for his cue. "The living room floor should be fine for now, until you figure things out." Until I figured things out. Those words played on repeat in my head like a broken record. I had a degree. I had a plan. I was surviving a recession, and they acted like I was some lazy squatter. That night, I slept on the hardwood floor wedged between the coffee table and TV. The old sleeping bag from family camping trips offered no cushion. Every creak in the house echoed. Brielle's laugh upstairs, her music thumping. My mother's footsteps. My dad's cough. In the morning, I packed everything away. Quietly, neatly, as if I didn't exist. They didn't acknowledge it. Not even a glance. That week, Brielle hosted a study group. 4 girls camped out in the living room, my living room, watching Netflix and painting their nails. "This is my sister," Brielle told them, laughing. "She's between jobs right now. She kinda lives down here." "Wait, like..." On the floor, one of the girls asked, barely hiding her smirk. I said nothing. I just picked up my backpack and left. By the time I got back that night, my toiletries had been removed from the bathroom counter and stuffed into a plastic caddy in the closet. "Could you keep your stuff in there?" Mom said. "Brielle needs space for her skincare routine." I didn't respond. I didn't need to, but I knew this couldn't go on. Not like this. Not quietly. Not forever. So I started watching, listening, planning. Because when you erase someone, you never expect them to come back in permanent ink. For the next few weeks, I lived in silence, barely there, but still expected to show up like nothing had changed. I slept on the floor. I cleaned up after their dinners. I smiled when Brielle showed off her new lavender bed sheets. I kept my voice even, my words polite, my movements small. But inside, something was shifting. I wasn't just angry, I was done. Done waiting for them to see me. Done hoping they'd treat me like someone who mattered. They thought I was harmless. That made what I was planning even easier. At 600 every morning, I left before anyone else was awake. I told them I was going to job fairs or networking events, which technically wasn't a lie at first. But after my offer from Corvus Architecture came through, I stopped telling them anything. My mom didn't ask how the interview went. My dad didn't follow up. They were too busy helping Brielle plan her senior photo outfits and repainting the room I used to call mine. I emailed Linda my acceptance letter that same night. $62,000 to start full benefits flexible hybrid schedule. It was more than just a job, it was my out. I didn't tell anyone. Instead, I got to work. I'd always been careful with money. My savings were tight, but my credit was solid. What my parents didn't know was that I also had a small inheritance from my grandmother tucked away untouched exactly for moments like this. I found a local realtor, Monica, and made one very specific request. I want to look at properties on my parents' street, specifically the one next door. She blinked. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." As it turned out, the house right next to theirs had been sitting on the market for months. Outdated kitchen sagging fence, avocado-colored tiles in the bathroom. No one wanted it. Except me. I didn't see what it was. I saw what it could become. A quiet, well-planned retaliation. The kind of statement you don't need to explain. I toured it twice, signed the paperwork a week later, and secured a renovation contractor by month's end, all while still sleeping on the living room floor. Every night, I zipped up that sleeping bag. I reminded myself what I was building just beyond their backyard fence. Raphael, my contractor, was a perfectionist. I told him I needed the essentials: fast bedroom, kitchen, bath. Everything else could wait. "We can do it in 6 weeks, he promised. "Maybe 5 if weather holds." I nodded, handed him the key, and kept moving. Back at my parents' house, nothing changed. They never noticed the paint on my sleeves or the bruises on my arms from hauling tiles. They didn't ask why I was gone 12 hours a day. They assumed I was just out there figuring things out. The irony didn't even register with them. Brielle's college prep chaos took over the house. Her friends were there constantly, the music louder, the mess worse. I wasn't just invisible anymore, I was in the way. One afternoon, I came home early from work to find a group of her friends lounging in the living room. One of them was lying exactly where I usually slept. "Oh my God," she said, laughing. "You really sleep here?" I didn't respond. I just picked up my pillow from the closet and walked outside. That was the night I stopped eating dinner with them. I started keeping snacks in my work bag. Granola bars, trail mix, dried fruit. I told them I was eating out. They didn't care either way. My mom stopped asking if I'd be home. My dad didn't comment when my $300 monthly contribution stopped. No one noticed, or maybe they did, and didn't want to admit it. They thought they were pushing me to grow up. What they were actually doing was pushing me away. It felt good in a strange way. Freeing, like I'd stepped out of a play I never auditioned for. As the house next door came together, I started bringing small items over at night books, photo frames, notebooks full of sketches. One by one, I unpacked them onto clean shelves and white walls. Every piece I moved into that space made me feel lighter, stronger, more real. The night the countertops were installed, I stood in the kitchen and just stared at them. Smooth quartz, soft gray, with pale marbling. Chosen by me, paid by me. No one to tell me they were too modern or unnecessary. Just clean, beautiful lines and the echo of a house that was finally mine. By the 5th week, I was ready to make the final move. I didn't tell anyone. At 4:45 a.m., I woke up for the last time on that old sleeping bag. I rolled it up, folded it tight, and left it in the coat closet. I packed the last of my clothes into 2 suitcases. One trip. That's all it took. No scene, no drama. Just silence. I left a note on the kitchen counter. 3 lines. Found a place. Won't need the floor anymore. Alyssa. That was it. I moved into my house before sunrise. Took a long, hot shower in my own bathroom, made coffee in my own kitchen, ate breakfast at my own table, and when I looked out the back window, I saw my parents' house, small, familiar, and no longer mine. They didn't notice I was gone until evening. At 6:13 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Where are you?" Then another from my dad. "You left. What do you mean you found a place?" I didn't respond. I wasn't hiding, but I also wasn't inviting conversation. The next morning, as I watered the plants by my front door, I saw them watching from their living room window. My mom's face was tight. My dad's mouth moved like he was speaking, probably asking why I hadn't told them. I watched them watch me. Then I smiled, waved politely, and walked back inside. The following week, I began planning the backyard. It was the final piece. The contractor asked what kind of design I had in mind. I didn't hesitate. Something clean, modern, a rectangular pool, maybe with a small waterfall feature on the far end. He nodded. "You want it positioned toward the back or side." Facing that kitchen window, I said without blinking. He raised his eyebrows but didn't ask questions. I appreciated that. The permits were fast-tracked. Construction started 4 days later. I kept my distance. I wasn't cruel, I wasn't gloating, but I wasn't interested in making them comfortable either. They watched the digging from behind their blinds. Brielle finally texted me, "Is that a pool?" followed by, "Where even are you living now?" I didn't reply. They had made it clear how little I mattered when I had nothing. Now they'd see what I was capable of when I had everything. They never gave me space, respect, autonomy. I wasn't building a pool to spite them. I was building a life where they no longer had the power to make me small, and I was just getting started. For the next few weeks, I lived in silence, barely there, but still expected to show up like nothing had changed. I slept on the floor, I cleaned up after their dinners. I smiled when Brielle showed off her new lavender bedsheets. I kept my voice even, my words polite, my movements small. But inside, something was shifting. I wasn't just angry, I was done. Done waiting for them to see me. Done hoping they'd treat me like someone who mattered. They thought I was harmless. That made what I was planning even easier. At 6 hojros every morning, I left before anyone else was awake. I told them I was going to job fairs or networking events, which technically wasn't a lie at first. But after my offer from Corvus Architecture came through, I stopped telling them anything. My mom didn't ask how the interview went. My dad didn't follow up. They were too busy helping Brielle plan her senior photo outfits and repainting the room I used to call mine. I emailed Linda my acceptance letter that same night. $62,000 to start full benefits, flexible hybrid schedule. It was more than just a job, it was my out. I didn't tell anyone. Instead, I got to work. I'd always been careful with money. My savings were tight, but my credit was solid. What my parents didn't know was that I also had a small inheritance from my grandmother tucked away untouched exactly for moments like this. I found a local realtor, Monica, and made one very specific request. I want to look at properties on my parents' street, specifically the one next door. She blinked. You're serious? Dead serious. As it turned out, the house right next to theirs had been sitting on the market for months. Outdated kitchen sagging fence, avocado-colored tiles in the bathroom, no one wanted it. Except me. I didn't see what it was. I saw what it could become. A quiet, well-planned retaliation. The kind of statement you don't need to explain. I toured it twice, signed the paperwork a week later, and secured a renovation contractor by month's end. All while still sleeping on the living room floor. Every night, I zipped up that sleeping bag. I reminded myself what I was building just beyond their backyard fence. Raphael, my contractor, was a perfectionist. I told him I needed the essentials: fast, bedroom, kitchen, bath. Everything else could wait. We can do it in 6 weeks, he promised. Maybe 5 if weather holds. I nodded, handed him the key, and kept moving. Back at my parents' house, nothing changed. They never noticed the paint on my sleeves or the bruises on my arms from hauling tiles. They didn't ask why I was gone 12 hours a day. They assumed I was just out there figuring things out. The irony didn't even register with them. Brielle's college prep chaos took over the house. Her friends were there constantly, the music louder, the mess worse. I wasn't just invisible anymore, I was in the way. One afternoon, I came home early from work to find a group of her friends lounging in the living room. One of them was lying exactly where I usually slept. "Oh my God," she said, laughing. "You really sleep here?" I didn't respond. I just picked up my pillow from the closet and walked outside. That was the night I stopped eating dinner with them. I started keeping snacks in my work bag. Granola bars, trail mix, dried fruit. I told them I was eating out. They didn't care either way. My mom stopped asking if I'd be home. My dad didn't comment when my $300 monthly contribution stopped. No one noticed. Or maybe they did, and didn't want to admit it. They thought they were pushing me to grow up. What they were actually doing was pushing me away. It felt good in a strange way. Freeing, like I'd stepped out of a play I never auditioned for. As the house next door came together, I started bringing small items over at night: books, photo frames, notebooks full of sketches. One by one, I unpacked them onto clean shelves and white walls. Every piece I moved into that space made me feel lighter, stronger, more real. The night the countertops were installed, I stood in the kitchen and just stared at them. Smooth quartz, soft gray with pale marbling. Chosen by me. Paid by me. No one to tell me they were too modern or unnecessary. Just clean, beautiful lines and the echo of a house that was finally mine. By the 5th week, I was ready to make the final move. I didn't tell anyone. At 4:45 a.m., I woke up for the last time on that old sleeping bag. I rolled it up, folded it tight, and left it in the coat closet. I packed the last of my clothes into 2 suitcases. One trip, that's all it took. No scene, no drama, just silence. I left a note on the kitchen counter, 3 lines. Found a place, won't need the floor anymore, Alyssa. That was it. I moved into my house before sunrise. Took a long hot shower in my own bathroom. Made coffee in my own kitchen. Ate breakfast at my own table. And when I looked out the back window, I saw my parents' house, small, familiar, and no longer mine. They didn't notice I was gone until evening. At 6:13 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Where are you?" Then another from my dad. "You left. What do you mean you found a place?" I didn't respond. I wasn't hiding, but I also wasn't inviting conversation. The next morning, as I watered the plants by my front door, I saw them watching from their living room window. My mom's face was tight. My dad's mouth moved like he was speaking, probably asking why I hadn't told them. I watched them watch me. Then I smiled, waved politely, and walked back inside. The following week, I began planning the backyard. It was the final piece. The contractor asked what kind of design I had in mind. I didn't hesitate. Something clean, modern, a rectangular pool, maybe with a small waterfall feature on the far end. He nodded. "You want it positioned toward the back or side. Facing that kitchen window," I said without blinking. He He raised his eyebrows but didn't ask questions. I appreciated that. The permits were fast-tracked. Construction started 4 days later. I kept my distance. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't gloating. But I wasn't interested in making them comfortable either. They watched the digging from behind their blinds. Brielle finally texted me, "Is that a pool?" followed by, "Where even are you living now?" I didn't reply. They had made it clear how little I mattered when I had nothing. Now they'd see what I was capable of when I had everything they never gave me: space, respect, autonomy. I wasn't building a pool to spite them. I was building a life where they no longer had the power to make me small. And I was just getting started. The night after I closed the door on my mother, I expected silence. Instead, I heard voices drifting from their backyard, low-heated ones. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught enough: my name, the house, the pool. My dad's tone was clipped, frustrated. My mom sounded defensive. And though I knew better than to care, part of me still listened. Not because I wanted validation, just confirmation. That they were finally forced to confront what they'd pretended didn't exist. By the end of that week, word had spread. Neighbors waved more than usual. Some offered congratulations, others just knowing glances. My renovation had become local gossip. Not in the messy, dramatic way I feared, but in a curious, respectful kind of way. People noticed when someone who'd been overlooked built something impossible to ignore. I wasn't hiding anymore. I walked through the neighborhood with my head high, visited the local coffee shop in business attire, and worked late hours without guilt. Hartman Design trusted me, and that trust fueled everything. My projects received praise, my team respected me. Marissa, my boss, called me in one morning and slid a folder across her desk. Inside were plans for a new community space in the city's East End. A big project, public, green certified. "I want you to lead this," she said. I blinked. "Lid? You've earned it, Samantha. Your attention to detail, your approach to design with purpose, it's exactly what we need. And your story, honestly, is powerful. This isn't just about the project. It's about the person leading it." I accepted. Of course I did. And as I left her office, I felt something shift inside me again. I wasn't just rebuilding. I was rising. Brick by brick, drawing the kind of boundary you couldn't erase. That weekend, I held my first small gathering. Just a few coworkers, Aunt Patrice, and a couple of neighbors who had cheered me on since day one. Nothing fancy. A backyard grill, music, low laughter, easy. And, of course, the pool. It glowed under string lights I'd hung myself, casting gentle ripples across the patio. Everything looked exactly like I'd imagined in my head months ago when I was still pretending not to mind the sleeping bag and the hallway boxes. Brielle came too. She asked first. Didn't assume. Just sent a message that read, "Would it be okay if I stopped by? I'd really like to see the finished pool." That mattered to me. She arrived quietly, dressed like a college freshman, already oversized hoodie hair in a braid, nervous energy clinging to her like perfume. She handed me a tiny succulent in a glass pot. "For your new house," she said. I smiled. "Come in." She wandered through the rooms, slowly, wide-eyed. "I remember all your models and sketches. It's weird seeing it all. Real." I nodded. "It's not weird, it's progress." She followed me to the backyard where everyone else was gathered. When she saw the full scope of the space, the design, the flow, the way everything fit, she whispered, "This is beautiful." "It's home," I said. Later that night, when the guests had gone and the music faded, Brielle lingered behind. We sat by the pool again, just like the day she first visited. This time, she was quiet for a long while before speaking. "I heard Mom crying last night." I looked over. "Why?" She said she doesn't know how to fix it. That she didn't mean for things to get this bad. That you've shut her out. "She did that herself," I said. "I know." She paused. "But I don't think she does. She keeps saying she didn't know you were hurting. She didn't care enough to ask. She's not good at saying she's wrong. Then she'll stay stuck." We sat in silence again. "Do you miss them?" Brielle asked. I didn't answer right away. Then quietly I said I miss the version of them I used to believe in. That landed heavy between us. A few days later, I got an unexpected call from Aunt Patrice. "Your mom asked me to talk to you." I didn't respond. "She wants to invite you to dinner. Just the 5 of you. She says it's to clear the air." She should have done that before I packed my life into boxes. I told her that Patrice replied, but I also told her she's got to start somewhere. I sighed. "I'm not sure I'm ready." "That's okay. You don't have to go. But it might give you peace to hear what she finally has to say." That night, I stood in my kitchen looking out at their house. I thought about the effort it took to make the first move, and how little effort they'd made when it mattered most. Still, I texted Brielle, "Is the dinner still happening?" She replied instantly, "Yes, 7 p.m. casual." I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I typed, "I'll come," but just to listen. The house hadn't changed. The same creaky steps, the same front door. But it felt different. Like I was stepping into a version of myself that didn't exist anymore. I wasn't there to be forgiven. I wasn't even there to argue. I just needed to see if anything they said would finally match the truth. We sat at the same table where they'd once praised Brielle's student council run and skipped over my job interviews like background noise. Dinner was stiff, quiet. No one touched the roasted chicken for the first 10 minutes. Finally, my mother set down her fork and looked at me. "We messed up. It was abrupt, blunt. We thought we were helping Brooke, but we hurt you instead. We made you feel small." My father nodded. "We didn't realize what that floor represented. We just thought you were okay." "You never asked," I said. "I know," he admitted. "And I should have. That was my failure." My mother tried again. "I think I believed that if we didn't talk about your struggles, they'd go away. That if we focused on Brooke's future, yours would figure itself out." "It didn't," I said. "I did." Brielle reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I'm sorry for my part, too. I should have been louder." I looked at each of them one by one. "You all made me feel like my place in this family depended on my success. That as soon as I stumbled, I was disposable." Tears filled my mom's eyes. "That was never the intention." "But it was the impact," I said. She nodded, silent now. I stood up. "I'm glad you wanted to talk. I appreciate the effort. But it's going to take more than one dinner to rebuild trust." My dad stood too. "We'll do better, if you let us." I nodded. "We'll see." Back home, I changed into pajamas, brewed tea, and sat by the pool under the stars. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. Just clear. The lines had been drawn, not to push people away, but to protect what I'd built. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally standing on solid ground. After that dinner, I didn't rush to follow up. I needed time to see if their words held any weight. Talk is easy. Change isn't. And I'd learned not to trade my peace for the comfort of keeping others happy. That week, I kept to my routine. Early mornings at the office design meetings during the day, poolside evenings. There was peace in structure, comfort in the life I'd built for myself from the wreckage. I didn't owe anyone access to it, not without accountability. Brielle came by more often now, usually with coffee or snacks, always asking first. It felt like a new version of our relationship was unfolding, slow and careful. She didn't try to erase the past, didn't pretend everything was fine. She just showed up differently, less self-centered, more aware. And that mattered more than any apology. One Saturday morning, she plopped down on my patio chair and stretched like she owned the place. "Dad's been quieter than usual," she said. "I think he's trying to figure out how to approach you without messing it up." I raised an eyebrow. "Silence is a start." She chuckled. "Yeah, but it's not sustainable." I sipped my coffee and looked out at the still water in the pool. "He doesn't have to tiptoe. I'm not waiting for anything. I just need consistency." She nodded. "Fair." A week later, he showed up not at my door, but out by the sidewalk while I was watering the front garden. He stayed on the public side of the property, a detail I noticed and appreciated. "Looks good," he said, nodding at the landscaping. "Thanks," I replied without looking away from the flower bed. "I was wondering," he continued, "if you'd want to have lunch sometime, just us." "No agenda." I paused, then I nodded. "Okay." We met at a small cafe downtown, neutral ground, somewhere that didn't carry the weight of old arguments or lingering expectations. Conversation stayed light at first, weatherwork neighborhood updates. Then he leaned forward. "I keep replaying everything. That night we moved your stuff. the way we handled it. I don't know how I didn't see it as cruel until now. Because it wasn't cruel to you, I said gently. You saw it as practical. You saw me as stable enough to displace. He looked ashamed, and that was new. I thought I was being realistic, he admitted. But I see now that realism became a mask for neglect. That struck something in me. An acknowledgement not just of what they did, but why it hurt. I nodded slowly. Thank you for saying that. He hesitated. I want to do better. I don't expect things to go back to how they were. But I'd like a relationship based on who you are now, that I could work with. Then let's build it from here. No pressure, just progress. Back at the house, renovations were nearly finished. The final touches came together like puzzle pieces. Custom shelving in the office, a new art piece over the fireplace. Subtle, intentional choices. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't chasing approval. I was simply creating something that felt like mine. Work remained fulfilling. The community center project took shape beautifully. I led the team, collaborated with engineers and environmental consultants, and even gave a presentation at City Hall. Marissa beamed with pride. You're becoming one of our most trusted voices, she said after the meeting. That night, I stood in my kitchen and thought about how far I'd come. Months ago, I was being stepped over on a hardwood floor. Now I was designing spaces that would uplift entire communities. The biggest surprise came when I got an email from a local university. They wanted me to guest lecture for their architecture students. Just a one-day workshop. But it meant something. It meant people saw me, not as someone in transition, but as someone worth listening to. I prepped hard for that workshop. Spent late nights refining my notes, balancing technical insight with personal narrative. I didn't want it to be just about blueprints and materials. I wanted it to be about resilience, about design as a reflection of self-worth. The day of the lecture, I walked into that classroom wearing confidence like armor. I spoke with clarity. I told them about setbacks, rejection, starting over, and how the floor I'd slept on had become a foundation, not a failure. Afterward, a few students lingered. One girl, probably no older than 20, said, I didn't know someone like you could go through something like that. It makes me feel less alone. That moment, that sentence meant more than any applause. That weekend, I hosted a small backyard dinner. This time, I invited Aunt Patrice, my team from Hartman, a few neighbors, and yes, my dad. I didn't invite my mother yet. Not out of spite, but because the space still didn't feel ready. She hadn't done the work, and I wasn't willing to lower my standards again. During dinner, my dad didn't try to dominate the conversation. He just listened. When someone complimented the pool design, he smiled and said, my daughter made that happen. All of it. He didn't say it with ownership or entitlement. He said it with respect. Later, as people began to leave, he helped me collect plates and stack chairs. This was nice, he said. Really nice. I nodded. It was. He hesitated before adding, you deserve it. All of it. That night, I watched the lights in the pool flicker across the water. There was no rush to forgive, no pressure to forget, just a growing clarity that boundaries could exist without bitterness, that healing wasn't loud. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, like roots taking hold beneath the surface. My mom remained distant, watching all of this unfold from the same windows where she once dismissed my future. I noticed her watering her roses a little longer when she saw my guests arrive, standing at her mailbox a few seconds too long when I passed by. It wasn't avoidance, it was hesitation. Brielle mentioned one evening, she's trying to figure out how to apologize. She already said she was sorry, I replied. No, Brielle said. She wants to apologize for real this time. I didn't respond, I just kept walking. I wasn't holding out for the perfect apology. I'd already rebuilt my sense of self without it. But if she ever did come with truth in her voice, I'd know. Because I'd grown enough to hear the difference. I went to bed that night wrapped in quiet gratitude. Not for what I'd been through, but for who I'd become because of it. I no longer feared rejection because I'd learned how to accept myself. I didn't chase belonging because I'd built a home where I belonged without asking permission. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about presence, peace, and purpose. the kind you can only find once you stop waiting to be seen and start living like you already are. The end of summer arrived slowly, the days stretching just a little longer before folding into cooler evenings. My routine settled into something comforting. Work projects, weekends filled with neighborhood walks, quiet breakfasts on the patio, and occasional meetups with friends or colleagues. Life wasn't perfect, but it finally felt like mine. And maybe that was the point all along. I no longer measured myself by what I hadn't achieved. I saw value in where I was, who I was becoming, and the space I'd created with my own hands. I didn't need to prove anything anymore, not to my parents, not even to myself. I just needed to live. One Saturday afternoon, I heard a soft knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, my mom stood there clutching a small paper bag. Her eyes looked tired, not angry or cold, but hesitant, unsure. "I brought lemon bread," she said quietly. "Your favorite. Thought you might want some." I stepped aside without speaking. She entered slowly, scanning the living room. "You've really made it beautiful in here," she added, not quite making eye contact. "Thank you," I said, setting the bag on the counter. The silence between us felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. She stood there looking around until her gaze finally met mine. "I was wrong," she said suddenly. "Not just about the room. About everything. I let my fear of failure push you away because I didn't know how to sit with uncertainty. You came home needing support, and I treated you like an inconvenience. I see it now, and I'm sorry." It was the first time she didn't minimize, didn't sidestep. Just honesty, plain and vulnerable. I nodded slowly. "It took a lot for you to come here and say that," I said. "I appreciate it." She nodded, too visibly, holding back tears. "I didn't think I had anything to learn from my own daughter. But you taught me more by leaving than I ever expected. I just hope it's not too late to be different." "It's not too late," I replied. "But we're starting from where we are, not where we were." That visit didn't fix everything, but it opened a door. We started talking again, not daily, but enough. She began showing up in small ways, offering help with the garden, asking about my work, listening, without turning the topic back to Brooke. I kept my boundaries, but I allowed some space for connection. Not out of obligation, but because I wanted to. That mattered. Brooke left for college that fall, full scholarship to State University. I helped her pack, gave her some basic kitchenware and a hand-drawn floor plan for maximizing space in her dorm. I don't deserve all this kindness after everything she said while folding a hoodie. "You don't have to," I replied. "You're trying. That counts." Before she left, she hugged me tightly. "You're the person I want to become," she whispered. "Not because you're successful, but because you didn't let bitterness win." I didn't cry then. I waited until later, after the house was quiet again, and I stood in the backyard under the soft lights strung along the fence. The waterfall feature in the pool trickled in the background. For the first time in a long while, I felt proud not just of surviving, but of evolving. At Hartman, I was promoted again project lead on our newest urban revitalization initiative. My face appeared in the firm's fall newsletter right next to a quote I'd given during an interview. "Good design isn't just about beauty, it's about dignity. Everyone deserves a space that makes them feel valued." When Marissa asked how I came up with that line, I smiled. Personal experience. That winter, the city invited me to speak at a women's leadership conference. I almost said no. I wasn't sure I was ready to be that visible. But something inside told me I needed to stand on that stage not for recognition, but to own the path I'd walked. The room was filled with women from all backgrounds, students, professionals, mothers, entrepreneurs. I told them about architecture, yes, but also about being overlooked in your own home, about sleeping on a floor you once called a sanctuary, about building something out of rejection. I told them that boundaries were not walls to keep people out, but fences that protected what matters. The applause afterward was overwhelming. But it wasn't the applause that stayed with me. It was the quiet conversations later, the woman who whispered I needed to hear that, and the young architect who said, "Now I believe I can do it too." Back at home, my garden bloomed through early spring tulips and daffodils pushing through the earth like small victories. Dad came by one Saturday to help build a raised bed for herbs. We worked mostly in silence, but it was comfortable this time. Later, we sat on the porch with iced tea. "You were right," he said after a long pause. "We didn't see you clearly, but now I hope we do." "I see myself clearly now," I said. "That's what matters." That summer, I hosted a block gathering. Nothing fancy, just neighbors, food, and music. I invited my parents. They came, brought lemonade and fold-out chairs. No drama, no tension. Just people trying to show up better than before. Brielle was home from college, full of new stories and plans. She floated in the pool that evening, watching the stars blink alive above us. "You changed everything," she said quietly. "I just claimed what I deserved," I replied. As the night wound down, I stood at the edge of the yard looking out at the house I used to live in. It didn't stir pain anymore. Just a memory, a chapter. Not the end, not even the middle. Just one part of a story that had led me exactly where I needed to be. If you're still listening, if any part of this sounds like your life, if you've ever felt erased by the people who were supposed to protect you, I hope you know this. You are not a burden. You are not broken. You don't have to stay small to keep others comfortable. Build your space. Define your worth. Choose peace over permission. And remember, sometimes the floor we're forced to sleep on becomes the foundation of the life we never knew we were strong enough to build. So, tell me, have you ever had to walk away from the people you thought would always stand by you just to stand up for yourself? Let me know in the comments. And if my story helped you feel seen even just a little, don't forget to like and subscribe. There are more stories like this waiting to be told. And maybe next time one of them will be yours. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And above all, thank you for believing that you deserve more. Story 2. I called for assistance, but my daughter disregarded me. After her husband lost $300,000 in gambling, she is now sobbing on my steps, and I permanently barred them from my will. Hi there, this is William. I started this when I was 73 and I'm 77 today. Kansas is where I call home. Topeka used to be it. I'm somewhere else right now. For now, it is irrelevant. Although I didn't want to write this, the outcome has caused me to think about it for much too long. I might be able to avoid waking up at 3 a.m. if I write it down and say it out loud. Pondering the phone call. Here it is then. I lost my wife Olivia in 2018. Carcinoma of the breast. Swift and aggressive. 44 years of marriage. She held my hand as she passed away at home. And after that, there was silence. Not serene. Stillness, yet too quiet and vacant. For the first year, I did all right. I paid the bills, maintained the garden, cleaned the house, and went to the VFW on Fridays. I occasionally spoke with the neighbors, but I started having issues with my hand. My eyes were not as good at night as they used to be because of arthritis. I backed out after hitting a mailbox one morning. I was frightened by that. I never touched the keys again after hiding them in a drawer the next day. Things were challenging at that point. I live in the country out there. It takes 20 minutes to go to the nearest food store. There are no Ubers or buses in this neighborhood, and ordering a cab costs $50 and involves a 3-hour wait. I decided that perhaps it was time to move. Nothing noteworthy. Something simple, maybe a flat close to my daughter Aria. My only kid is Aria. 3 hours to the east is Overland Park, where she resides. Married to Mark, a male. 2 children, a large home. She works as a counselor in schools. He is employed in finance insurance or a similar field. He talks about bargains and vacations all the time. Although we weren't very close, we did talk about birthdays, holidays, and sporadic check-ins. Aria came to stay with me for 2 weekends after Olivia passed away. I assisted with packing some items. We shed a few tears. Life continued after that. In any case, I thought I would call her and let her know I was considering moving nearby. Near them, yet not among them. I believed we could tour a few locations together. It was my hope that she would like it. I waited until mid-afternoon on Sunday. I was aware that she was doing laundry and generally around the home at the time. She answered a little breathless. "Dad, hello? Is everything all right?" Yes. Yes, I'm doing okay." "I wanted to ask you a quick question." "Yes. What is going on?" I told her that I had given up driving, that I was the only one finding things hard, and that I was thinking of relocating closer to her and selling the house. She took a while to reply. Then, as if he were there next to me, I could hear her husband Mark in the background. "We're not managing an aging, antagonistic Arya. He is capable of solving it." For a moment, my heart really stopped. I awaited her reprimand of him. "Speak up. Protect me." She didn't. Rather, she let out a breath. Then, in a quiet tone, "Dad, we're really busy at the moment. The children, Mark's job. We can't handle this, in my opinion. Handle me like I'm a load of laundry or a car repair." I didn't become upset. I didn't shout. I simply sat with my phone in my hand. I looked at the couch. Olivia picked out the wall she painted and the space in my old place. All of a sudden, everything seemed weird. "I get it," I answered. "In any case, thanks." I hung up. I gave a real estate agent a call the next morning. "Hello?" "I'm considering selling," I said. "Are you able to stop by the visit from Tammy on Thursday? Early 40s, expert, asked only a few questions. We took a stroll around the grounds. It would sell soon, she claimed, and it was in excellent condition. She was right. I had a buyer in 4 weeks. To be nearer to their son, a retired couple is relocating from Texas. They made a cash payment. Arya was unaware that I had sold. Why ought I to? Trying to stay in someone's life when I wasn't wanted was becoming old to me. In Lawrence, I came into a little one-bedroom condominium. A food store is only a block away, and the neighborhood is good with physicians nearby. Everything I required. I then gave my lawyer a call. I had a will. I've had it for a number of years. The house funds, truck insurance, and everything else used to go to Arya. However, I began to believe she had already made up her mind after that call. I thus made I requested that my lawyer change everything. A local veterans organization that built homes for elderly soldiers would receive half of my fortune. The other half is donated to a Topeka senior program that helps individuals like myself, those without a partner. How about the truck? I still hadn't figured that out. A year or so has passed. It was a peaceful, beautiful life. At the senior center, I made a number of friends. Carol, a kind widow like myself, was there. Her grandson Tyler once assisted me in repairing a leaking wash basin. "Well done, kid," even if I didn't inquire. They stopped by to see how I was doing. Then I had a stroke one evening. I don't remember much. A nurse in the hospital flashed a light into my eyes as I awoke. It was mild, they said. We were able to catch it early, but it frightened me, made me think about how fast things can change. I spent 2 weeks at the rehab facility. I did something I hadn't done in almost a year after I came out. I called Arya. She took it up. I explained what had transpired to her. I was well after having a stroke. All I wanted was for her to know. For a long time, she kept silent. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" she then inquired. She had already made it clear where I stood, so I refrained from saying what I wanted to say. I stated you were busy instead. "One more thing," I told her. "Arya." I changed my mind. "It no longer goes to you." There was a significant silence in the queue. "What are you?" she inquired. "I'm getting assistance here. Those who did not view me as a burden, I'm giving what I have to that person." Her eyes started to well up with tears. It didn't satisfy me. I didn't feel rude. I experienced no emotions, simply worn out. 2 weeks later, she came back to visit me. She sat next to me, brought flowers, and apologized profusely. I had no idea how to refuse Mark Dad. I nodded without saying much. After 20 minutes, she departed. I didn't see her again after that. I still sometimes receive calls. Voicemails are left by her. I hear them, but I don't return their call. I have yet to finish the narrative because of what I intended to do next. Let's just say that everyone was taken aback when the estate lawyer finished the last arrangements. After Aria's visit, everything calmed down again. I went back to my routine, which included Wednesday visits to the senior center doctor's appointments and breakfast at the same cafe. Carol kept checking on me. Tyler, her grandson, started taking me to appointments. He turned down petrol money. "You remind me of my grandfather," I simply stated. I was recovering both psychologically and physically, but I had a lot of weight. Something incomplete, yet not quite detest. It's been 3 months. The letter then arrived. Mark typed it. It wasn't even handwritten. "I believe there has been a miscommunication, William. We want to go over the will again. During your most recent chat, Aria was rather emotional, and I think she might not have communicated herself well. We have always been concerned about your welfare. We should get together for supper at some point to discuss how to proceed as a family. There is merely corporate-sounding nonsense, no ownership or apology." I didn't answer. Aria phoned after 2 weeks. This time I answered. "Dad," she muttered. "Please, Mark had previously been out of line. We're trying, but I'm aware of that. The children are eager to see you." However, that section caused a minor discomfort in my chest. It had been almost 2 years since I last saw my grandchildren. Neither yes nor no was my response. She made another attempt. "We were considering the possibility of you relocating to one of the assisted living facilities in our area. On weekends we could go." I almost burst out laughing. Before they wouldn't allow me live close to them, but now that they could smell the money, they agreed to let me reside nearby, as long as they were spared from having to cope with me directly. "I'll give it some thought," I said. However, I then called my lawyer once again. "Is it possible to tighten the estate further?" I said. "Make it bulletproof." "Yes," he said. "Even a group of ravenous sharks couldn't pass through it because we constructed it so firmly." I handed my vehicle to Tyler. "Not in the will. Simply sign the title." "Over? Are you serious?" With wide, grave eyes, he inquired. I told him, "In just 6 months, you've done more for me than other individuals do in their lifetimes." Carol wanted to thank me by sending me a casserole after learning about it. I informed her that she may show our appreciation by letting me teach her how to play poker on Thursday of next week. Then something else happened. The main desk called me when I was in my flat. A woman downstairs motioned for me to come up. She didn't say who she was. "No," I told them. My door was knocked on 2 hours later. It was Aria with her hair pulled back and no makeup. She didn't appear to have slept. As soon as I answered the door, she said, "I'm sorry. I should never have allowed him to speak to you in that manner." Without waiting, she went inside. "Dad, I'm afraid. We're having problems. On some deals, Mark lost a lot of money. I believe he is on the verge of going bankrupt, but he refuses to acknowledge it. It was there, the real reason." She tried to give me a hug. I stayed put. She whispered, "I'm not here for the money." I promise. I made a mistake. I took a seat, let her talk. She sobbed. They informed me that their home was submerged. Mark had been a gambler. Yes, gambling while trying to hide it behind losses on investments. What was his loss, I asked. "More than 300,000. I blew a soft whistle. She winced. I remained silent for a long time. All I did was look at the TV. It wasn't turned on. "Did you come to me for assistance?" She averted her gaze when I asked. "No," she said, "not precisely." I gave a nod. I got up, poured myself some water, and went to the kitchen. "Aria," I answered, "I've dedicated my entire life to keeping you safe and providing for you in times of need. I didn't want to live with you. I just wanted to be close. Not to take out a loan. Just to not be so alone." She started crying once more. I didn't stop her. "I'm not sure if I will pardon you. I told you. Not quite yet. Maybe not ever." "I know," she whispered. Then she departed. The following morning, Mark called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. He said he wanted to clarify the air. 2 days after that, I learned something new. Mark was attempting to call my lawyer. He truly walked up to the firm's office and asked a meeting to discuss family modifications. The receptionist shut him down. My lawyer contacted me soon away. "You were correct to shut this down," he informed me. And now I knew for certain this was not about guilt, it was about greed. But I wasn't finished yet. I had one more idea, one more move, and it would assure they never saw a dime, but they would know what they had lost. 2 weeks after Arya's visit, I got a tap at my door. It was Carol. She had a disturbed expression. "You might want to sit down." She said, "I simply happened to see your daughter in the drugstore." I arched an eyebrow. Why had she come here? She wanted to know about your medications from the chemist. I was wrongly impressed by that. I kept the name of my pharmacy a secret from Arya. I kept my meds a secret from her. During the time I was recuperating from the stroke, she had not visited me once. Why then was she worried about my medicines now? She claimed she was looking over your medications for any potentially harmful interactions. She wasn't subtle, though. She sounded more like she was conducting research. I sat with it for the rest of the afternoon after thanking Carol. I requested that my pharmacist add a privacy lock on my records over the phone at about 6 o'clock in the evening. I also provided them with a list of persons who were never to be given any information about me. Mark and Arya were first on the list. The building manager called me the following day. Someone had tried to interview me in the foyer, he said, asking about my health, whether I had guests, and whether I had any family members listed in case of emergency. I felt you should know, but I didn't give her any of the information he gave me. They were in a circle. They hoped I would die and left the vault open not because they missed me. They were unaware that I was doing more than simply locking it. I was making a minefield out of the blasted thing. I had another meeting with my lawyer that week. I questioned him about the legal options available for leaving a video statement at the execution of my estate. "Very possible," he said with a smile. "We have everything ready." In his office, we took a recording. Just one take. No screenplay. Me alone staring at the camera. I didn't shout or make fun of them. I simply lay everything out. When I requested for assistance, what happened? This is what I overheard Mark say. What Arya didn't explain what transpired next or the reasons for my choices. I then stated this. "I've departed, so if you're reading this, it's too late to act like you had the chance to be my daughter when I needed her. Instead, you turned your back on me and let your spouse to abuse me like a stray dog. You're not getting anything because of this. No assets, money, or second chances. The individuals who supported me when it counted, that was the end of it. All you will receive is a letter. Next time someone asks you for help," I added, leaning forward and looking at the camera. "I hope you give this occasion some thought. I'm hoping it stays." I got a package from an unknown source a month later. A nice flyer for a phony-looking Overland Park Health Center was inside. Private care for the elderly. Rates are in the 5 digits per month. Good logo. Great pictures. A pamphlet that looked less like an advertisement for a care home and more like one for a country club. There was a handwritten message inside. "This could be a good fit for you if you're still looking. Mark and Arya, we would assist with the deposit." It wasn't even signed by them. Love just has names. I didn't answer. Rather, I took another action. I gave a local writer a call who writes a brief column about end-of-life planning, family estrangement, and elder care. I gave him the whole story. I told him about the place, but I didn't tell him the names, what I did with my estate, and the details. He transformed it into a piece titled, "What My Daughter Taught Me," that discussed living on my terms and dying alone. It gained popularity and was shared on Facebook, hundreds of times. It was on display on the wall of the senior center. For their waiting area, the Veterans Organization created copies. "Sir, you kind of went viral," Tyler said when he dropped by. I simply nodded. I got a voicemail from the area a week later. She sounded tremulous. "I read the article, Dad. I got it from someone. This told me everything, even though I didn't know you were going to do that. She wasn't depressed. I had experienced it. She was angry that people were aware of it. "All I want to do is talk," she said. "Give me a call back, please." Since I wasn't done yet, I didn't. She didn't anticipate the last surprise I had in store for her, for Mark as well as for her. They would also understand what it was like to be seen as a problem once everything was in motion. About a month after the article went viral, I started getting letters. Even though I don't use them frequently, I do have emails. Strangers' messages, a few elderly individuals, a few are younger. I appreciate you telling the truth. For raising your voice when no one else would. One mother said that following her initial heart surgery, her daughter stopped calling her. According to another father, his children only came to ask questions about inheritance. I realized how many people have similar experiences to mine, used, pushed aside, and forgotten. I made my final move at that point. I never told Arya about the foundation you see, after I made changes to my will. Together with my lawyer and a friend from the senior center who was formerly a nonprofit accountant, I started working on something. In honor of my late wife, we created the Olivia Home Fund. It is a private, charitable trust created to assist elderly people whose families have abandoned them. It was only a few months ago that we made it public. The local media took notice. A number of radio stations contacted me to inquire about doing an interview. I remained silent until it was all over. The worst part. In the founding story, we specifically named Mark and Arya to explain why this faith was required, not to belittle. We were honest. It was not well received by them. A week later, Arya showed up at my door. Before I opened the door, I could hear her sobbing. "Please, Dad, please. I beg you to do it." Mark is no longer employed. After that, we're drowning the kids in the home. They don't understand what's happening. They think you're angry at them. That one hurts. Even though I loved my grandkids, I refused to let guilt pull me back into the fire. "Why have you come here now?" I asked. Her eyes were red as she glanced up. "As there is nowhere else for us to go." Slowly, I nodded. I widened the door to let her see how I looked now, not to invite her in. Slower, thinner, and yet upright. "You had someone once," I stated. "However, I asked to be close to you. You looked aside. Because of what I have, you now want to be close to me." Her face was buried in her hands. "I apologize," she whispered. "I said I believe you. That doesn't alter the harm, though." Then I told her something that made me use every last bit of strength I have. This is my final gift. It's been accepted already. A $200,000 donation to a neighborhood initiative that assists unmarried moms in caring for their aging parents. She jerked her head up. "Hold on, what I said, not for you. It is dedicated to women who have done what you haven't. Women who created space." There on the steps, she broke. Since saving her was no longer my goal, I let her weep but did not comfort her. It was my responsibility to keep the man I had left safe. The repercussions happened fast. I learned about Mark's bankruptcy filing via local court records. They are open to the public. Their house was about to be foreclosed. Arya was forced to live with her in-laws, whom she had always characterized as cold and controlling. I don't feel bad, but I also don't celebrate their suffering. Punishment was never meant for them. They were expected to gain knowledge, and they did. Isabella, my granddaughter, sent me a card. Only a note and a sketch 6 months later. "Mom believes you're angry. You are missed." The only thing that broke me was that. The card is kept in my drawer. Maybe I'll call her personally someday. Perhaps, but not just yet. Because in all honesty, I'm still healing. Every week, Tyler comes to visit. In the garage I rent next to my condo, we repair vintage radios. Soup is what Carol gives me when my knees hurt. When a wing of the veterans' new housing complex was named after Olivia and me, we felt honored. My money was lost by my daughter and her husband. I found peace. The trade was that. And I would have gotten in touch with the realtor sooner if I had to do it over.